This is the Business Storytelling Show, a top global marketing podcast listened to in more than 100 countries, live streamed on social media, and broadcast on DBTV. Christoph Trapp chats with industry leaders to help your company tell better business stories. Here's today's episode.
Hey, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? Hey, today's guest, Amanda Proscia, she really earned this media coverage. Ha. We got to play with some words. But I mean, seriously, I'm pretty sure I reached out to her, found her somewhere. I was looking to talk about earned media. And, earned media, as I said in my preview post on my blog, christophtrapp.com, it's kind of I have a mixed feeling about that term to begin with. Back in my journalism days, I'm like, earned media, and it's worth how much? And I get paid how little as a reporter because you just got earned media. Didn't seem very fair to me. But let's find out about what it is. How do you do it? Friendly reminder, we are live on Amazon because today's guest does actually have a book. So you can check that out. And you can also scan the code right there, PR Confidential. I'll try to fix that picture. I don't know why that's coming through from Amazon like that in a second when we get going. But let's find out. What is earned media? Why do we care? And how do you value it to begin with? Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Nice to see you. And really interesting topic to me. Of course, today I am a content marketer, so I'm always going after earned media, right? Like quote me, take my article, blah, blah, blah. But tell us, what is earned media to begin with at a high level? What's the definition? And who do you earn media from? Traditional channels or who else?
Yes, well, you hinted to it when you spoke about your experience as a journalist. Earned media is typically the media that we get published in news publications or on TV shows or now more and more on social media channels. Earned media is any media that is marketed to a large channel of audience, but it's not paid for, unlike an advertisement. We spend a lot of our time talking to reporters like you used to be and encouraging them to tell the story that we're pitching to them, something that involves our clients or something that we feel is newsworthy.
And do you think today earned media is it still worth the same when you talk about traditional media, or how do you kind of mend those fences, I guess? I mean, back in the day, so here's kind of how I was thinking about that the other day. The LSU basketball coach, right? The women's coach. So she had a thing and she said, Washington Post is calling my players and they're going to do a story or whatever. And I'm thinking, very interesting. What would she have done 20 years ago? Right? Like it wouldn't go wild on TikTok. It wouldn't go wild anywhere. People wouldn't even see it. So there was only one channel. So how has the earned media, how has the mix changed? Do you know what I mean? I mean, do you go after the traditional channels, trade publications, bloggers, or how does that work, if that makes sense?
Sure, absolutely. And the answer is really audiences. So the essence of PR is about earning perception, maybe shifting the perception from what it might be now, or gaining new attention, gaining awareness for your brand or your product or a person. So it really depends on where your audiences are. So the people that you want to reach, are they reading newspapers? Are they watching the morning news programs? Are they reading trade publications? Or are they primarily looking at social media channels and TikTok, like you said? So it really all depends on who you're trying to influence and where you might find those people.
Yeah, it's a lot more. There's a lot more I was going to say investigation, but that's not it. But like audience exploration, right? You have to figure out, where do you reach people? How do you reach them? How do you know you can actually reach them there? So when we talked about guest blogging on a show earlier this week, and certainly that's one way to get the word out there. But is earned media, is it like full articles, or is it like submitting quotes, or like what are the different stages of that?
It can be any of those things. If you're lucky and you have a really great news story and a reporter agrees, you can get a full article written about your company or your leader or your product or what have you. It could be some places as well read as the New York Times, or something as focused like a TechCrunch or Entrepreneur. But sometimes you don't get a full article. We're happy if we can get a quote. if we can get included in a roundup piece, if an author is an opportunity to do an author of a byline article that's placed in a target publication for us. Earned media can also be something that's not media. Actually, it can be if you get a speaking opportunity at a prominent convention or trade opportunity, something like that. It can be you've won an award. It's pretty much anything that's a third party validation of what you're doing.
It's just interesting how it has evolved, right? I mean, there's all these different channels. I mean, there's a lot more, data driven even, right? You have to be sure, where are people? Are they really there? Does it just look like they're there? I mean, I'm thinking of some people, I'm not going to name any names, but I know they bought a list and that's their audience. And now they're trying to sell it to me. And I'm like, I can just buy that same list. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you bought it. I bought it. You didn't build the audience. So we have those shenanigans going on, but how do you know? Like, how do you really and truly know? I mean, some are simple, right? Like New York Times, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you can get in there, go get in there. But like some of the, I don't know if they're tiers or not, but like some of the lower tier publications or outlets, how do you know it's worth your time?
It's like you said, it's getting harder and harder to know, but the proof is in the pudding. If you start getting more attention, if your brand is more well known, if your social channels start getting more traffic, if your website starts getting more clicks, if your product starts selling, whatever your KPI is for that earned media, that's really what you want to watch. If the results are showing that you're reaching the right people and that they're taking the action that you want them to take, then you know you're on the right track. If it isn't, then you might want to do a little more investigating into some of what those claims are by the outlets you're reaching out to. Fortunately, as the technology improves so that lists can be bought and those types of things can be managed better, there's also more tools for the PR and advertising side where we're able to use advertising technology to have a pretty up to moment knowledge of who we're reaching and how those people are interacting with the content.
Yeah, it's just very interesting, and also the different goals. So I think it's always important to figure out what the goal is, right? I mean, if your goal is to get a backlink and the publication you pitch to does not link to you or only links to your LinkedIn profile, maybe not the best fit, right? But if it's a very targeted publication and you just want your name in there somehow. But again, then like, how do they display your name, right? I mean, I see people who get quoted in these articles, and I'm like, nobody even saw that, right? Like nobody even saw your name in this article on page 33 of this print magazine, and in the last paragraph, like they're not going to see it. But I don't know. But how do you know? So I see some of these websites, and I know there's one company. Let's call them a software company. Not in the industry I currently work in. So just to be sure nobody feels offended or guesses who it is, you're not going to be able to guess. And they have all these logos on their website as quoted in like every major publication. And I'm sorry, but you tell me if that's possible, or did they just buy an article and publish it in all those publications? I mean, how do you know that when people boast that they're being quoted everywhere, that it's actually legit and not just, oh yeah, we were quoted one time and we paid $500 for it or something?
Well, if it's a reputable publication, then you can be sure if you see the quote. Of course, some people can say they were quoted in something and not link to the article or not show you the quote, and then it's up to you whether or not you trust them. But if they're showing you a quote or they're linking to an article in a reputable news outlet, then it was there, because those people they don't take what we call pay for play, which is when you pay a publication to have an article about you or quote you or something like that, which is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. I get emails from my clients every day saying, oh, look, we got this great opportunity for $3,000. We can have an article in this publication. And we say, don't bother. That publication, first of all, it's not really news. Secondly, no one's going to see it because they have such low readership. But most of all, it's not journalistic. It's no reporter out there saying, I've investigated this story and I've reported on it. They're just selling their space. And that's really not worth a whole lot.
What's interesting to me too is it also depends on the style of the show, right? So today is clearly, I mean, not the show, but like the content type. So for example, today, this is a truly editorial show. Amanda did not pay anything to be on here. I invited her. They didn't pitch to me, blah, blah, blah. But I do have sponsored guests from time to time. And we make that very clear when we do. But most sponsored guests, I say the same questions I would say to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's still like I still push them. I might not push them as far as I push both of us, but I still push them on like, okay, why? Why is this important? Why? Do you know what I mean? Like, so the style doesn't really change. But so just something to keep in mind on how it's worded. Like, I'm always worried when I see the whole top 20 suppliers of whatever, and it's an advertising section, right? I mean, that's not earned. Nobody actually, I mean, whoever paid for it, they came up with a list. Do you still put value on earned media? I mean, back in my journalism days, that always drove me crazy when I heard like this one placement was worth $40,000 or whatever the number is. Do you still do that and look at that?
Yes, very much so, because it really is true. I mean, like we said earlier, the New York Times, if you get a favorable mention or article in a publication like that, which reaches so many people, and most of all, has a reputation for journalistic integrity. So people reading it know they can trust and put faith in what they're reading. That has been proved very recently in recent studies that I actually quote in my book, that people take that with a more of a sense of trust, and they're more willing to believe what they're reading than if it's something that they know was purchased, because everybody understands there's less diligence done behind. And of course, you know, your show, I'm sure you're mentioning that your sponsors are your sponsors, and so they're expecting that there might be a little bit of a different tone change in how you're approaching it. And again, different media handles things differently. But there is a great amount to be said for getting a journalistically reported on article in a target publication that reaches the people that you want to reach. That I see it every day with my clients. That can move the needle in ways that almost no other marketing can.
It's just interesting how you do it. So let's shift to that. How do you get earned media coverage? And I know one thing, I mean, there's some reporters like help a reporter out or whatever, and people can, submit their responses. And I actually did that. I don't know if it was no, it was not help a reporter. I was like help a B2B blogger or something like that out or something like that. And I got so many responses. And clearly, I don't know what the percentage was, Amanda, but there was a big percentage, and they were obviously AI generated, right? Not a unique story, not a unique take, stuff I could have just written myself, to be honest, right? Like, I put that out there so I can get something unique that I didn't think of, right? To quote them. So maybe that works for some people, but it didn't really work for me to get good content that way, or at least it's still not done. And typically I try to turn articles as quickly as I can. That one is just sitting there because it's way too much work to go through all this stuff. So what are some tips for people to get earned media? Is it relationships? Is it just to know your story? Is it being available? Or what else do you recommend?
That's a great question. So yes, for Help a Reporter Out, I should note that is a subscription-based system. So we pay to get that feed so that when we reply on Help a Reporter Out, that reporter knows that they're speaking to a real person who has a real story, who is a PR person, and who knows how to develop a story for them. In terms of how you do it in general, there's an art to it. There are some relationships involved. My team has been doing this for a long time. We know which reporters are interested in which types of stories. We know which publications are printing what types of stories. And beyond that, we also know how to create the right type of stories. So we work with our clients to help them develop something that is not only interesting, but newsworthy, so that when reporters hear from us, they know they can trust us. They know we're not giving them something that's puff piece or uninteresting to their readers or AI generated, heaven forbid. They know we're real people who are developing real stories with companies and products and people behind us who will probably be interesting to their readership. So, we develop a pitch. Sometimes we'll develop a press release. We will make our clients available for interviews. We will develop a whole news kit of information, whether it's videos or photos or bylines of leaders or whatever we need to really give the reporter everything that might compel them to create a story about us.
I think what I heard you say a little bit there is it is about being helpful, right? I mean, I just know some companies. So, for example, I don't really pitch to reporters too much, but every once in a while I see something out there and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and I'll reach out to them, or if I have a thought, somebody I might know somewhere or whatever, I might do it every once in a while, and then they say, hey, let me give you a call. And I say, no, I'm at dinner. No, it's opening day. I'm watching the Yankees play Houston. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, or whatever. Or like, I have to check every answer with my boss. And I'm thinking, like, you have to be available, right? Like, if a reporter calls, like, you're on their schedule or not.
absolutely. Yeah, the news doesn't stop, and a lot of reporters are on very serious deadlines. They're working on different stories. They have to go to print at one point or another, and if you want to be included, you have to be on their schedule. So yes, that's how we operate at a PR agency. We're always available. We're always responsive, and we particularly are aware that if we fall down and don't deliver for a reporter something they might need, then they might not be so quick to work with us the next time because we didn't deliver for them.
I think it's easy to forget for people though, because in corporate America, right, we have different deadlines than reporters. We work differently, and I still remember I was actually working as a reporter for not a reporter, but as a journalist, basically for a B2B publication. I was at a conference, and I saw this really cool booth, and I was like, oh, I would like to talk to you about this and this and this and this, and it's all video based. I'm not going to say I was a YouTuber, but basically, right, like video based content, and that's how it started. And their response was, can you send us the questions and we will get back to you? And I'm like, there's no written questions. Like, it's on video, like the end. How do you teach people to give the right answers? Or how do you teach people to either have the right person available, or whoever ends up in front of the reporter has the right answers?
Well, a good way to start is to have a PR person, whether it's someone on your permanent team or you hire an agency like mine. Those people, that's all we think about, is making sure you're ready when press opportunities come up. If you don't have that, then their media training is something we do, and a lot of companies do media trainings to make sure that your leaders can respond in the moment. Just take some time before you're going to be anywhere in front of a reporter, or an event is a very good example. Have a talking sheet, have Q&As that you've prepared. Think about the kinds of questions that are going to come up when people are interacting with you or your company or whatever it is you're putting out there, and make sure you know the answers and they've been prepared and polished. It's a basic thing that a lot of people forget to do.
Yeah, and I also think I mean, you can say the wrong thing. I get that. But if you know your story, if you know what you stand for, if you know, I hate the term, but if you know your talking points, right? Or like, this is who we are, this is what we do. I mean, theoretically, logically, and I know people aren't logical, but logically, it seems so simple to me to answer a question, right? If somebody asks me, hey, Christoph, why is storytelling important to any company? Like, I could answer that. Like, if a New York Times reporter would call me with that question, I do not need any prep. I can just talk about that topic for the next 8 hours, right? So how do you teach people? And maybe the one thing, maybe to make that more specific, how do you teach people to talk in sound bites?
Hmm. So what you're not aware of about yourself, Christoph, maybe you are, but you're a storyteller, you're a writer, you're a communicator. These things come naturally to you. When we find someone like you among our clients, we're thrilled because we know they're not going to need a lot of help. It's not normal that we find someone like you. Particularly my agency, we're tech focused. We work with a lot of founders who are engineers or developers, or something where they're not used to interacting in a storyline basis. And I lead a lot of messaging workshops for our clients. And the first question I ask them is, what does your company do? Why do you exist? And I'm not kidding when I say 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes later, they're still talking. They are circling around that answer. They're giving me background. They're giving me speeds and feeds. They're giving me their mother's history. I mean, you can't believe how far afield some of these answers can go. And we have to bring them back to the middle and say, yes, that's all of that has some interest, and of course it's valid, but what we're here to do is create news. And if what you're saying isn't newsworthy, then it's not going to be interesting to a reporter.
So my takeaway from this entire section of this episode 657, by the way, my friends. So really exciting that people are still tuning in, and we're going to keep this going as long as everybody does. So what I'm going to take away is Christoph is not normal. I'll take it as a compliment, but it is kind of baffling to me, honestly, that executives, founders, and I totally can relate to what you just said because I've seen it too. Right. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work with companies and for companies where there was a good story why that company exists. It wasn't just like, well, because I needed to do something. It was like, I saw this problem and it hurt my parents and I wanted to fix it. Right. Like that is a good story. But they're not always that common. So let's just play that through for maybe 60 seconds. Let's say you have a client who doesn't have a good story. Like, the end. How do you kind of get them over the hump to have something interesting to talk about that's not made up, that's still authentic, but like they really need kind of a push in the behind to get there? Like, how do you even start? Where do you start? How do you get it out of them?
Yeah, well, the short answer is some clients don't have a good story, and what they're offering isn't newsworthy. And to those people, we have the integrity to say, don't hire us because you're not ready for PR yet. But the vast majority of them do have it somewhere. And it actually outline it in the book. And I'll tell your readers where they can get a free copy of my book at the end, is what we call the 3 I's. If a company comes to us with any of the 3 I's for a story, we know we can get news about them. So those are innovation, impact, and insight. Innovation is, if you have a new tech or new something that's different and better than what exists, that's easy. Impact is your business doing something that's truly new and different, or have you just met a big milestone? Have you made a significant hire? Are you shifting the way the work is done in your industry? Is there some sign of impact your company's making? And insight is also known as thought leadership. So do your executives have some level of expertise that they can talk about? What have they learned in running this business or in being a leader in the industry? How can we use them and their voice to, pen articles or give speeches, that kind of thing? If you have one or more of those I's, we can typically work with you to find where the news is that we can get coverage for.
It's just so interesting that, great tips, but one of your first answers was, maybe you're not ready for PR. And I think that sometimes like people forget about that. One option is to actually focus on the strategy that's right for you. And maybe it's PR, maybe it's content strategy, maybe it's direct sale. Who knows what it is, right? So it's just kind of interesting. Don't just go after something because it's the latest shiny object, but go after something that makes sense. Really appreciate you coming on the show. I always learn a lot, and I certainly learned a lot from you today. In the last 30 seconds, tell us who should reach out to you, who do you work with, and really appreciate you coming on the show, Amanda.
Yes, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here. We work with all things tech at my agency. So we're about 10 years old. We have clients who do financial tech, healthcare tech, consumer electronics, enterprise technologies, SaaS, you name it, robotics. We do a little AI. Any kind of tech in any field, my clients are generally in there, and we pride ourselves on taking complex, difficult to understand, sometimes new technology that no one's ever heard of before, and we translate it into something that the press will get excited about and your potential audience will get excited about.
Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the Business Storytelling Show on your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.